Hello everyone, welcome to AWS Tutorials. In AWS Tutorials, we provide workshops and exercises to learn about AWS services. These workshops and exercises are published to our website aws-dojo.com. Today, I'm going to talk about Amazon Honeycode, and this was a service which was launched quite some time ago. It is still under beta. But today I'm going to talk about how you can use Amazon Honeycode to build your applications and what are the fundamentals you need to know about it. And of course, towards the end of the presentation, I'm also going to build one application from the scratch so you understand the experience of building the application with this service. So what exactly is Amazon Honeycode? It is a fully managed service from AWS. And this service can be used to build applications which are accessible from both browser as well as mobile devices. And the best part is that when you're building these applications, you don't need to write any code. So it is a no-code approach for building the app. So you must have heard this term no-code or low-code approach to build the application. Honeycode is a service in that area, and here you don't write any code in order to build your applications. So what are the steps or what is the process involved in building the applications? The first step is always starting with preparing your data. So you first define your data, the schema, the relationship, data types, those kind of things. And once you have configured your data, then you start building your applications. You start creating apps and screens and start binding your screens to your data. And once you have configured your app, then you build automation. And automation actually can do many things. For instance, it can perform updates on the data. It can be used for navigation. It can be used for sending notifications, or can be used for calling some backend service. Those kind of things you can do as a part of the automation. And then finally, you start sharing your application with the other users so that other users can access the applications. So you provide control or access to the applications to the users. So that's the final step. And this whole 4-step process you can perform under a single workbook. So your workbook is kind of you can say a project. And under that project environment or workbook environment, you prepare your data, you build your application, you build your automation, and finally you share with your you share with the end users. Okay. So let's go through each of these steps in progress so that you understand the process of building the applications. So starting with preparing the data. So in Honeycode, actually you can create multiple tables. These tables are also called sheets. Okay, so like Excel sheet. So you can create multiple tables. And then when you are creating a multiple tables, actually in these tables, you can define your columns, you can define the data types, their format. Some fields you want to have a calculated field. So for instance, based on the value in the some fields, you want other fields to be to get automatically populated or calculated. You can define those kind of calculation. And the best part is that you can also define configuration between multiple tables. So you can define this is my master table, this is my detail table. That kind of relationship also you can define when you're preparing your data. So our first step is always to prepare this table structure, sheet structure, relationship, formats, data type, calculations. So that you have a data in place on which you can start building your application. And anyway, I'm going to show you a demo of this whole building process, so you will understand what I'm talking about. So once your data is prepared, then you start building your application. And when I say I can start building the application, basically what you're doing is that on a set of data, you can build more than one application. And generally, if there are more than one set of users, then and they have different requirements, then you can build different type of applications for these users. But yeah, you can. You have a data, then you create one or more applications on top of that data. Each of these applications will have a set of screens, a set of pages where you configure your UI, then you bind that UI to the data behind the scenes, so that if you do something on the UI, it manipulates the data behind. So you link your screens to the data, and you also configure things like visibility on the UI. So for instance, when a button should be visible, when a particular text box should be visible. If you want to define some kind of rules like that, you can define that as well. So primarily, in this step, what you're doing is that you are building one or more application on top of the data. Each application will have multiple screens. Each screen is just like a UI interface, a particular user interface, which is binded to the backend data. And then you also have opportunity to configure visibility, in fact, rule-based visibility, to see when should a button be visible versus not. Okay, so that's the second step you do. So once you have built your application, then you go on to the third step, which is building the automation. And building the automation is like building your business logic. So here you start performing automations, like you might want to perform the whole CRUD operation, where you say, okay, I want to view the record, I want to delete the record, update the record. You can define that kind of business logic. You can also set up navigation between the screens. So you can say, okay, from this screen I can get to that screen by on click of that button, and then can come back to this screen. That kind of navigation you can configure. You can also configure notifications. So if you want that once a record is created or updated or deleted, something like that, you want to notify someone about that operations using email, you can configure the notification as well. And finally, you can also use a webhook. And webhook is when you want to call some kind of backend API in order to pass the data and do some operation in the backend. So the automation is primarily building the business logic of your applications in terms of manipulating your data and sending notification, calling backend APIs, and navigating between the screens. And that's what you do on this process. So when you have your data, app, and automations, all three in place, then your app is ready. Okay, and the last part after that is that you can then start sharing this app with the other user, with the end users, so the end users can access these applications. Now, the end user here, it's a very interesting thing to know that the Honeycode uses the concept of a team. That means you will have a team will have members, and then members will have two roles, admins and member. Okay, so admins are the people who can actually modify the app. Okay, so they are the app creators who create app, who modify apps, and the member role are the team members who can only access app, who can run the app, but they cannot modify the app. So I just said that Honeycode uses the concept of this team. So your app can be shared or can be made accessible to members of the team, and then when you share with a member of a team, whether you and then at that time you specify whether this member will have admin access or a member access. If it is member access, then that user can only run the applications, nothing more than that. So generally your end user should be your member, should have member access. And then if I am sharing it as an admin, that means that guy is also can also modify the application. Okay, so generally the developers team, the people who are developing the app, should have admin access, and then people who are using the app should be the member access. Now, it is very important to understand that there are only two roles, members and admin. So one who can modify the app and other who can only access the app. There is no third role. So if you have a requirement where you can actually, if you want to have support multiple types of roles, and based on that role you want to have control on these guys can modify this data, other cannot modify the data, generally Honeycode is not suitable for that kind of things. Probably you can make it work through certain hacks and certain I will say hacks is the only way, but I won't see it will be sustainable to maintain it. So if you have a requirement where you want to maintain multiple types of role and you want to have access control on the data based on that role, then Honeycode is probably not a suitable platform for building such app. Honeycode is for building apps where the users, where a team of users in a team can collaborate with each other using these apps to automate tasks and processes between them. At the same time, keep this in mind that since on a data you can create multiple types of apps, multiple apps, you can create an app specific to a user. Yeah, that you can do. Suppose you have got 5 different type of users in your team, and for 2 users you want to create one type of app, for 3 others you want to create other type of app. That you can do. But you're creating altogether a different app. But if within the same app you want these 2 will have one kind of access rights, this one will have different type of access rights, that is not possible, because your roles are very simple. Either you can access app as a member, or you can modify app as an admin. Okay, so this is very important for you to understand when you're deciding when to use Honeycode as a platform to build your app. The last point, which is very important, that personalization of the view is still possible. That means if you want a particular user to see only certain rows, nothing beyond it, you can do that. So you can control what data, what rows, what records a user can see. That kind of personalization is possible, but role-based, multiple role-based access control on the data is not possible. Okay, so moving forward. So how does authentication works in Honeycode? So there are 2 things possible. One is that you can use email ID and password. So when you subscribe to Honeycode, then you can add your team members in the team, and then when you're adding the team members, you provide their email ID, and then each of these members can use their email ID and their password to access the app, either as a member or as an admin. But if you want, you can also leverage AWS Single Sign-On. So if your account is configured and connected with AWS account, your AWS Single Sign-On can be used to access your Honeycode app. So basically, when you're trying to build application within enterprise where people are already using AWS Single Sign-On, in that case, that AWS Single Sign-On can be used to control access to the apps in the Honeycode as well. Okay, so keep these 2 things in mind. Either you can go for very basic like email ID password kind of access, or if you have AWS Single Sign-On configured and your then you can actually connect your Honeycode environment to AWS environment, and then can leverage AWS Single Sign-On for authentication purposes. Okay, so moving forward, so let's talk a bit about how do we provide integration with AWS services. And there are multiple scenarios and multiple ways you might want to perform such integration. One is using Amazon Flow. And you use Amazon Flow in the case when suppose you have some data in S3 bucket, and then you want to actually import that data into Honeycode table or sheet. Yeah. So if you have certain data in S3 bucket which you want to import into Honeycode table, then you can use App Flow service, and Amazon App Flow service will use S3 as the source and Honeycode table as the destination, and then this App Flow can be run based on the event, based on the demand, based on the schedule, or on demand to import S3 based data to table. That is one type of integration you can do in the Honeycode, and it is sometimes very important because sometimes you say, okay, I have some of my company data which I want Honeycode to use. Then in that case, that company data you can put into S3 bucket, and then through Airflow that data can be imported inside Honeycode, and then you can use Honeycode apps on top of that. Yeah, simple. The other thing is, what if Honeycode wants to call the API? So you have got your Honeycode app over here, some screen. You can use a webhook automation, and then through that webhook automation you can call API gateway, AWS API gateway based API, and then that API can provide integration with any other AWS services. Yeah? So whether you are calling Lambda or any other service as a proxy service, you can pass the data to those services. So that's another way where you are building one application which is calling an API, and then the API is then calling some other AWS services. Now keep this in mind that this configuration is fire and forgot. That means it is not a request response that, okay, I call this webhook and then API gateway will call, it will execute the business logic and response will come back and I can see that response. No, it is fire and forgot. So when webhook calls the API, it's like a synchronous call. It made the call and it is not waiting for any response to come. So if you want to create a request response kind of behavior, you have to do in a different way, and I will talk about that as well. But let's start with this one first, that you have a webhook automation where you can call an API, and then in a fire and forgot mode, that API can then call any other AWS services. So scenario like you have some table data, some records which you want to update into S3 bucket, DynamoDB, I don't know. Yeah, you can call any service if you want to build any automations around that. The third one is using Lambda inbound. And this is a scenario. So you saw that you can use app flow, and in that case, app flow can take an S3 data and then can import into a table, yeah, or sheet. What if you want to use service outside S3, like you want to import data from DynamoDB or Redshift or RDS or anywhere else? In that case, you can use this kind of inbound approach where you can have a Lambda function which can talk to this AWS service to bring data from there, and then it can actually update data not only on the table but also on the screen. So this is very interesting. So Amazon Honeycode does provide API to not only update the data in the table, but also run any automations or update on the screen as well. Okay, so both are possible. So you can have this kind of Lambda inbound scenario, and generally this one you would like to use if you are trying to use a service outside S3 which you want to bring into Amazon Honeycode for any kind of data update or any kind of screen automation. Okay. Now, from the API point of view, there are 4 types of API Honeycode supports. So you have a screen API, which can be used to do any automation or action on the screen. Then you have this table metadata API, which can be used to see what are the tables available and what are the columns of the table, like schema information about the table you can find out. Then you have table row operations, which can be used to perform a typical CRUD operation, like create, update, delete kind of operations on your table. And then further we have import API, which can be used for importing the data. So these 4 types of APIs are exposed by Amazon Honeycode, which a Lambda function. Well, I'm showing Lambda over here, but you can use EC2 instance as well, or any other thing. I mean, because it's just a matter of writing a code which is simply calling Honeycode API and performing these 4 types of operations. Yeah. Now, when you are playing with actually Honeycode object model to work with the screen or the table or the records within the table, then actually it's very important to understand. And then this I will probably cover in detail. In fact, I will have some more videos covering more on the customization part or a custom coding part through this kind of scenario. But actually, each of these work group, app, screens, table, rows, columns you see inside Honeycode, each of these have a unique ID, and these IDs are used to actually program with your Honeycode object model for these 4 types of operations. So your just to give you an idea that you can actually look into one screen and you can see what is the workbook ID, what is the app ID, what is the screen ID. Similarly, you can also get to know the information about table IDs, record IDs, and those kind of things. Okay, so that's the 3rd type of integration. Now, 4th type of integration is request response. Because remember, I talked about that you can call a Lambda API gateway, and that API gateway is fire and forgot. Then the 3rd approach was there is a Lambda function which can call back, which can make an inbound call. If you take the approach 2 and approach 3 together, actually you can create a request response type of integration as well. So the flow will be is that in Amazon Honeycode, through a screen, you call a webhook automation, which is calling an API gateway. And then that API gateway is calling a Lambda function. And then this Lambda function can make callback using Honeycode API to update table or the screen. So this flow is fire and forgot. So when this webhook calls the API, it fires and forgot. But this Lambda code, AWS Lambda has got behavior to call back. So actually you can pass those workbook ID, screen ID, app ID as a parameter to the Lambda function, so that Lambda function knows that which workbook or which screen or which table I'm dealing with, and it can make a callback to update those screens or those tables. So it is not a true request and response where you have a call going and then coming back, but you can say it is more of a request and callback mechanism to get a request response type of behavior. So that's also a type of integration you can do. So moving on. So what are we going to? Those are the fundamentals. Okay. So I think at least the minimum thing you should know in order to build the application. Now, few things we are going to do here is that I'm going to build a leave applications over here. So we'll have 2 tables. One will have your leave request and one will have a status. And then we will create 2 apps. One was the request app, one was the approval app. And then the request app will have 2 screens, one where I can see my leave request, and other I can create a new leave request. And then we have approval app where I can I can see the leaves which I need to approve. So this is probably for the employee, this is for the manager. So manager can see the leaves for the approval, and then he can either approve or reject the leave. And once it is approved, we want to call an API gateway, which will will call a Lambda function and will simply log the record. So we are not doing much business logic there, but we want to simply store the data which has come there. So this is what we are going to build today to show the experience of building inside AWS Honeycode. So it's a demo time. So let's move on to demo. So here we go. So here I've got AWS Honeycode. So you can also go to AWS Honeycode and create a basic plan based access, and in basic plan actually it is free of cost for you. So any of you can work with it without spending any money. And what I have done here is that I have got this team, my team over here with my name, and then I have connected it to my personal AWS account. Okay, so I have got this also done so that if I want, I can some point of time use AWS Single Sign-On to access this as well. But today I'm not accessing it based on AWS Single Sign-On. I'm accessing it using email ID and password, and this is my email ID, and I have got a password here, and you can see I'm admin here, and I can add more members here, and I need to provide simply the email ID of the guy and a member or admin, and then I can have more people here in the team with which I can share my app. So let's go back, start building the app. So in order to build the app, first you create a workbook. So I can use a template here, but I'm not going to use a template. I'm going to build from the scratch. And this one I will say it's a Dojo workbook. Okay. So it will create an app for me. So now my app has been created, and it will create I'll say skip. It will create a table for me. So, okay. So this has on the left hand side you can see I can see my tables, I can see my apps. There is no app right now. I can see my automations. There is no automation at this point of time. So I go back to my table. First of all, I want to call this one say leave requests table. So this is leave requests table, and the first thing first here is I'm saying that suppose this is my request ID, and then the second is who is the user who is sending the request. Then I have got I will say request date. Okay. And then I will say my start date for the leave, then for how long I want to go on a leave, so let's say duration, and then I also want to put say status here, status of my request. So basically 4 fields: my request ID, a unique ID for my leave request, username, who is the user who is actually sending the request date, start date, when my leave starts, duration, and then status. So let's do a few things. So first of all, request date is date time. So I go here and change my format to say date time over here. So I will say let's use this format. I like this. Then my start date is also a date time. So I go ahead and change this one also to be a date time thing. Okay. Now duration is integer, number. So I will go here and say this one is a number, and it is no decimal places in this number. And then status is something I say my status could be either new or approve or reject. Yeah, whether my request has been, it's a new request, whether it has been approved by my manager or rejected by my manager. So I want to convert this into a pick list from another table. So I'm now trying to create another table and link it back and relate it back. So to do so, what I will do, I will select this table over here and say, let's use the wizard. And in the data modeling, I want to create a pick list. So it's saying, okay, so what do you want? So in the leave request, for this status column, I want to create a new table and link to that. So I create a new table. And here we go. And what you will see, if you see in the tables, I have got a new table created status. So first of all, I don't like leave request underscore status. So let me make it a little short name called status. Then I don't want status, so it's a little confusing. So I can say column name is code. And then I have got new, approve, reject, and then you can see it shows a related record at how many records are linked to this record. So if you click on that, in fact, I can see the record as well. Yeah, you can see the record, blank record here. So if I go back to my other table, you can see here now it is a pick list. So I can select from the table rather than writing it. So actually, I don't need these 3 rows anymore because I have done my data modeling. Now that my data modeling is done, so my two tables are ready. Now I want to create an app. So I add my first app. I have 2 choices. I can use an app wizard, and in that case it goes ahead and configures the entire app, like it will have one screen for view, one for update, one for delete, those kind of things. But I want to build from the scratch. So I'll click on I want to build from the scratch. Okay, I will skip this one. And it has added one screen for me. Now, if you go give attention over here, you see here mobile, and you can see here web. So this is how my web interface is going to look like. This is how my mobile interface is going to look like. And there is a sync button over here. That means if it is on, then whatever changes I make into web will be reflected into mobile, and whatever changes I do into mobile will reflect it into the web. Okay, so both will work. So, and if I click over here, I can break this link over here. In that case, I can configure my mobile and web interfaces different. So in order to save the time, I will keep it the same. So first of all, let me change this app name here. So I will call it leave request app. So this is my leave request app. My first screen is where I want to list my, so I will say list screen. That means I want to list my leaves over here, and I change the name over here. If I change it, I want to say my leave requests. Okay, so now I want to add my object over here to start building. So I click over here and then say I want to add the object. And right now my idea is to list the records. Okay, so I see this column list over there. Many ways I can create the list. I can use stacked list or column list or blank list to configure in my own way. I'm going to use the column list over here for now. So it says, okay, from which table you want to populate the data, and I say I want to populate from leave request, and I want to see my request ID. I don't need to see my user ID because I am the user. I see my request date, start date, duration, and status. Okay, so I simply, and I also click on the add details button. Well, I will not add for now the add details. Okay, let's leave it for now. Okay. So yeah, I do this one and say I want to create, and I will use this one later, guys. Okay, in the approval app. So let's say I want to create this list over here. So now what it has done, it has added a list over here in this screen. Now, at this point of time, if you click on this view app link over here, actually you can start seeing how your app is coming along. So if I click over here, it is opening my app into a new page altogether, and there I can see my app configured. So you can see here my leave request app, my leave request, and this is my link, and then you can see that there's no result. So fair enough, let's keep it open. Okay. Now what I want some screen where I can add my request. So what I will do over here, that I click on the screen and say I want to add a button. Okay, so I click on the button over here to add the button, and this button I want to give a name. So I will say this one is actually new leave request, and let's make it little bigger. And what I want is when I click on this button, actually it should take me to another screen where I can create my leave request. Okay, so I click on the actions over here and say you can see that I can create some more automations, but I will do it later. Right now I just want navigation, so I can create a quick action here saying I want to navigate to the new screen and say let's create a new screen altogether. Okay, and yeah, here we go. So if I do that, and if I come back to my screen here, you can see a new screen has been created. Okay, and this screen, let's give it a name. Let's call it new screen. And this screen should be, if I change the title over here, it should be called, say, new leave request. Okay, fair enough. If I come back to my app over here and say, okay, fine. So if I click on my new leave request, it goes to new request page where there's no content, and I can always come back to my leave request. In fact, I'll put a button to come back. So I'll show you. So you can see here that I have created a new leave request button. Now let's design this particular page. So on this page, actually, I want to have an interface to create my leave request. So I click on this page over here and say I want to add the object. And in this case, we added form. So form object can be used to add a new form on the screen. So I click on the form object. It says, do you want a button and then move to somewhere for creating the form? I say, no, I want this form on the current screen itself. So from where the data will, add to which table this form will add the data. So I'm saying this form will add data to the leave request table. So request ID is automatically generated, so I don't want this on the screen. A user is me, so I don't want this on the screen. Request date is today's date, so I don't want this on the screen. Start date, yes, I know. I need that. Duration I need because I need to tell the duration. Status is always new, so I don't want that. Okay, so I create the screen. So you can see here it has actually created two fields here, start date and duration. And guys, I'm not changing the name and those kind of things, so I understand you know how it works. So what I've got over here is that it has automatically added two more buttons over here. One is the save button and other is the cancel button. And actually cancel button says that it says go back to previous screen, and I want to be very precise here, so I want to say, you know what, go back to the list screen. Okay, when you click on the cancel over here. So, and on done, I want to actually save. Oops, I want to actually change it to submit, name to submit. So now if you look at the screen over here, if I say click on the new screen, you can see the two fields over here, and then it has my start date, duration, submit. I have not yet completed my business logic, so I'm not going to click on that, but if I click on my cancel, I come back. Okay, so fair enough. So far so good. So now what I do, I complete my business logic on the submit. So on the submit, when you click on that, you can see under the action one, edit operation is already or edit automation is already added. So if you click on the edit automation, actually it has, you can create multiple types of automation here, guys, and just to show you, if you click on the add action here, you do have a choice to say I want to add a row or delete a row or overwrite or update, insert, or webhook, or notify, and also navigate. And navigate is sorry for some disturbance here, but you can see here that I have already got two automations over here. One is, you can see navigate to previous screen, where it says go back to previous screen. I want to change it to list screen, and here I have already got add row to this leave request table. And I can add actually more actions over here as well. But right now, let me modify this one. And what it is saying here is that add row to leave request table and take data from this start date content. So these are like variables. So you can see that. Okay, sorry, I should have not clicked there. So coming back to this screen again. So it's saying take data from start date content, and start date content is nothing but it is here. It is the variable representing the value of this field, and saying put it to the start date into this leave request table. Similarly, you see the duration content over here from this field, and put it to the duration field in the leave request. But leave request has got many other fields which I need to populate. So let's start adding those fields as well. So going for, so I click on this add another to add one more form, and say, okay, you know what, rest I want to populate my user. And user is pretty straightforward. My user is actually, there is a system variable called sysuser. Okay, so if I click on sysuser, this system variable should go to user. So this is going to take my logged in username and populate into my user field. So it was simpler one to do. Let's add another one. And I'm saying I want to populate my request date, and request date is actually today. So I'm saying, let's say I want to do today. Okay, so take my today's date and simply populate into the request date field. So far so good. Then I click on another add action. Oops, sorry, add another, and here I want to say I want status. And status is new always. So I don't want to hard code new over here, but I want to pick the status from the status table. So for that, I will use a formula called find row. So find row can be used to find a matching row from another table, and you know, status and leave request both are linked tables. So I want to find a row in the status table which I can link back to this record in the leave request table. So I will say find row into the status table, and what are the condition? Condition is status code. Status code equal to some value, that's a placeholder, and that value is actually new. So what essentially I'm saying here is that in the status table, look for a record which has got a code value equal to new, and link to that particular record. Okay. So you can see here, if you click on here, you can say it will evaluate to new, and I'm linking this record to the new record in the status table. And finally, guys, one more field is left, that is request ID. So let's populate the request ID, and request ID is something I want to populate using some random value, random integer value. So I will use the function called rand. So this is going to give me a random value. So it will tell you how the value will look like something like this. So I want to multiply it by, say, 10,000. So it gives me some good 5-digit value. Yeah, 5-digit value. Yeah, I'm getting 4-digit value. And then I want to round this. So I want to round this particular value. So what I'm going to get here is that it will give me oops, so I said round, but I say okay, round, and then what's my places? So I said 0 places. Okay, here we go. So you can see here, if I click over here again, it shows me, it will give me a value like this, 3278 kind of thing. So that's my request ID. So what I have done over here so far is that I have taken my in my leave request, I updated this start date and duration from my these two field values. Then my user is with sysuser. Then my request date with today's date. My status with new record in the status table, and then my request ID I have tried to generate through an ID through a random number. Okay. So this is what we have done, and once you do that, actually, it should navigate back to the listing screen. So all looks good. Now, if I come over here and try to run the application. Say I want to create a new leave application. I want application to have, for instance, on 16th, I want to go leave for 2 days. Submit. I came back and see that it has request ID, request date, start date, new. Let's create couple of more here. So I say on 26th, I want to go on vacation for 1 day. Okay, and then just to create some more records, I can go on 31st, and I want for 5 days. Okay, so now I have created some record and my application is ready. Now I could have added automation to send a notification to the approver that, hey, a new record has been created, kind of thing, but in the interest of time, I will move ahead. So what I will do, my request app is still open, so I'll keep it there. What I do here is that I will add another app, which is approver app. So if I go to my apps here and say I want to add one app and build from the scratch, and this I will say this is my leave approval app, and then my first screen is the list screen in this app. My screen name is, I will say I want to see, the approval want to see the requests for the approval. And here I want to add my list again. So if I click on this one here, I want to add my list again, but this time I want to update the list to be able to approve or reject. So to do so, what I will do is that, on this screen, I want to see the request from the leave request thing, and I want to see all the information. So let's keep, I want to see all the information, and I also want a details screen over here. So if you click on that, actually what it will do is that it will create a screen where you can see the list of the approvals, but it will also add a screen where you can see details of the request. So if you look at this screen over here, actually let's change this name a bit. Say this one is a I want to say this is details detail screen. Okay, just keep it simple. And this here is a this is detail request details, approve or reject. Okay, so far so good. So what we'll do, guys, we'll try to see this app as well in the browser to see how app look like. So this is how my approval app look like. So I have got requests for approval. I can see all 3 records over here. I can click on a particular record and it will show me the details of the record. In fact, I can, if I want, I can also navigate between the records from here as well. Okay, I can do that. So let's try to build further. So this screen is almost ready because all I wanted is simply list my records and then simply able to click on the record to see the details so that I can approve or reject. So let's work on the details screen over here. So in the details screen, I will not make any UI changes on this from a layout point of view, but let me start adding a few things. So for instance, I want to add 3 buttons. So 1 button, 2nd button, and 3rd button. So 3 buttons I want to add. 1 button is simply go back. That means go back to the previous screen. 1 button is for approve, and 1 button is for reject. Okay. So what we will do here now is that I can make it small like this. Say okay, and back. And on the back, let's keep it very simple. In the action, say, hey, go back to your list screen. Yeah. So if I go back to my approval app again and I click on the screen, I can see the 3 buttons. These 2 are doing nothing right now. It's blank, to be honest. I can click on them. I have done nothing on them. But if I click on back, I come back to my previous screen. So let's try to build more. So first thing first, let's talk about approval app. So in approval button, I want to update the record saying it is approved. So I come to my actions over here, and I can create some automation. So I click on creating the automation. The automation is I want to update or insert a row. So I want to update a row here. So which table I want to update the row? I want to update the row in say requests table. And say, okay, say, so how do I match, which row I update? So I'm saying is, if I look at this table over here, guys, I want to match on the record. I want to match on the update on based on the request column data. Okay, request ID data. See, if request ID matches, simply go and update that record. So request ID is accessed through a variable called request ID column data. So I go back to my automations again. Say approve, and click on this edit automation. Say I want to update my leave request table, and I want to update, say, match to what. So if you find that this request ID column data is matching to the leave request ID, so this is how you match your screen data with the table data. So if your request ID column data, which is this value, if this value matches to the request ID in the leave request table, then perform some operation. And it has already, so I can add more matching condition here, but I think 1 is enough. And similarly, this is the action, what you want to update. And I can add more updates here, but right now 1 is enough. So what I'm saying here is that update the status value, and I want to update status value with approved. And again, I'm not going to hard code approve here, but I will simply say that, okay, find row, and then find row in the status table, and then once my status code equals some percentage, some value placeholder, and that placeholder value is actually approve, then simply approve it. Yeah, so far so good. So if you can click on this one, you can see it evaluates to approve. So I'm saying that when you click on this button, when you click on this button over here, approve button over here, actually you perform this operation where you are simply you can see, if you can see the minimize one, you can perform this operation, say update the leave request and update the status column to approve. And then I want to navigate back to the list screen. So now my approve business logic is ready. Now quickly, similar thing we do for reject business logic. So I click on the reject and say I want to create an automation, add an automation. I want to update or insert the row in the leave request table. How do I match my record? Look into this request, look into this if data is in the request column data, and then pass it to the match it to the request ID. And if that is the case, then in the status column you simply and the syntax column simply say I want to say find row, and then here we say that status code equal to percentage placeholder, and this one is reject. So let's see if formula is right. Look, yes, right. So this sign is means is right. So if I click on this again, it says evaluates to reject. Now my flow is ready. So well, this one is not yet ready. I can minimize this because once I have updated my record, I need to add one more action where I simply navigate to the list screen. Okay. Fair enough. So let's do this. So if I go to my leave approval application again, I can look at my request over here and say, okay, fair enough. This one I approve. Okay, so this here one has got approved, and this one suppose I reject. In that case, got rejected. So if I go to my leave request application, and if I refresh my page here, I should see that my record has been updated to reject or approve. So that was the example of editing the records. Now, one last thing, I mean, there are so many things I can show and talk about, but in the interest of time and not to make the video very long, one last thing I want to show is using the webhook based integration to the API gateway or any other API you want. So what I have done is that I have created a Lambda function here. As you can see this Lambda function in my account where I have simply called, I'm going to call this Lambda function through API in the API gateway. And then what it will do is simply it will log the record coming over here. Okay, nothing more than that. And then here is my API gateway, which I have configured. So if I click on the API gateway, and if I look at the integration request, actually this API is simply calling a Lambda function, Dojo function, which I showed you earlier. And then it is using a Lambda proxy based integration. Okay. So if I go to the stages over here, this API is already deployed, and this is how my API has been deployed. So now what I want to do, then when the person clicks on approval, I want to send this record back to the API gateway, so that API gateway can then pass it to the Lambda function, and Lambda function right now is simply going to log it. But actually you do have a choice to build any business logic you want to build. So let's copy this URL from the API and go back to our leaves application. So once the approval happens, I want to update it. Now I can write automation two places. I can write a generic automation here as well, where I say when the record is created or updated or deleted, and if this condition is met, then you do something. You can do that as well. So generally your app level automations you build here, but if you want some button level operation that when approval goes, then only send the record to the backend, otherwise not, that you can do at the button level as well. So right now I'm going to show at the button level, but the same thing you can do at the app level using the left hand side, this automation panel. So go to the approval here and say click on the automations for the approval. And right now it has got only update the record and navigate back to the list screen. I want to add one more action, and that action is I want to webhook. So what I'm going to do is that, okay, what is the webhook URL? And here I provide my API gateway URL over here. And then I can pass my payload. So now I can start passing my payload, which could be the value from the screen over here. So suppose I want to pass payload like, okay, this is the employee, this is the start date, and this is the duration the person wants to go on a vacation. So 3 fields I want to pass. So if I come over here, and if I expand my webhook, so this is the webhook URL, the API gateway URL. The first payload I want to pass is who is the person who is going on the vacation. And that is actually, if you look at that, that is user column data. So my user column data goes into my person thing. Another thing I want to send is my leave start date, and that is actually start date column data. And the third thing I want to pass as a parameter to it is leave duration, and I can simply say okay, duration column data. So what I'm doing over here is that I'm taking 3 field values from here, duration, start date, and the user data, and passing that as a payload to the my API with the key person, leave start date, and leave duration. And I simply minimize it. So now my automation has got for better 3 steps now. First is updates the record as approved, then it calls an API in the backend, and finally it navigates to the list screen. So what I do now is that I go back to my approval screen, and I have got still one record which is not approved. Let's try to approve it, and hopefully this will call the backend service and will update my record, will pass my record to the API gateway. So if I click on this one and say, hey, I want to approve, okay, that got approved. Now if I go to my Lambda function, and in Lambda function there is no business logic, all I'm doing is simply logging my record coming. So if I go to my CloudWatch log, I should be able to see the log where my payloads are recorded or logged. So if I go to CloudWatch log for the Lambda function, yeah, oh, okay, see that my there's already one log. If I click on that log, you can see, yeah, you can see here my record has been passed saying this is my leave duration, this is the person, and this is my leave start date. So all 3 informations has been passed on as a payload to my API gateway. Now, right now the business logic was to simply log it, but if you want to, for instance, do something else, store into a DynamoDB table or somewhere else for any automations, you can do that as well. So that was all for today, guys. As I told you, there are so many things I can talk about, and I leave that thing to you. You tell me what kind of things you want to learn about building the app with Honeycode, and I'll be happy to make videos about that. But that was all today to understand the fundamentals of building the applications on Honeycode. And if you, yeah, I hope you like the video. If you like, please click on the like button. Please subscribe to my my channel. I look forward to your feedback for your, any recommendations, any new content, any mistake I made. I look forward to your feedback for the improvement. You can provide your feedback in the comment section of the YouTube channel. Okay, and I promise to come back again in a couple of days' time with another video. In the meantime, yeah, stay safe and have a nice day. Bye-bye.